see what's going on in the news this morning. Hopefully there's some of these very interesting stories making headlines across the continent, and we'll be sharing them with you right next.
Part of the continent, looking at the Daily Nation in Kenya. The big story says, cost of living, economy getting a battering from various fronts. Buckle up. Storm gathers over economy amid grand promises. Treasurer CS Prof. Njuguna talks about, he says, from all the things we have analyzed, 2023 is not looking good. There are clear signals that it is going to be a tough year. He talks, if you look at the exchange rate against the dollar from 2020 to 2023, we can see an increase. It was 100.96 as at 2020, 3rd of January. But in 2023, it is now 127.75. I'm comparing this to, 100.96, right? And now 127.75. So 2020 to 2023 exchange rate in Kenya.
Yeah.
Imagine here what it has been in Nigeria.
Yeah, it's been on steroids here in Nigeria.
Well, I'm glad that they are seeing this as a problem, that it's an issue before it gets out of hand. I do hope that more is looked into, in this regard. At the top of the paper, why there's a fuel shortage. Customers are facing a very fresh fuel shortage as some major oil marketing companies in Nairobi exhausted their stocks and turned away motorists amid serious cash flow challenges triggered by dollar shortage. Now at the top right of the paper, we can see outrage over Senator's anti-media tweet. Journalists condemn Chariot's brazen attack on press freedom. Now this tweet has been read by 86,100 people just over 4 hours after he posted it. And the tweet said, President William Samoei Ruto will succeed in crushing every cartel in the country, save for two that are extremely powerful. One, Kenyan banks, two, Kenyan media. Both are very powerful, influential, and synergize so well to protect each other's interests. For public good, a way must be found. And this is a tweet that has garnered a lot of reaction and has been condemned widely. Family appeals for help as Kenya Nchiya Ajabu composer dies. And he died at the age of 90. He's one of Kenya's most prominent songwriters. He died after suffering a stroke in his house in Mombasa County. Thoughts and prayers are with his family. Revealed Kenya's best paying jobs. There, you can check that on page 8 of the Daily Nation. Final story, talking about hard times, of course, still flowing from the big story that says households are reeling from the strains of heightened inflation, while businesses are struggling to find dollars to service their import requirements, including raw materials, at a time when more than 5 million Kenyans are staring at starvation. Amidst the bleak outlook, the government is still making big promises, as governments always do. But how well can they keep these promises? Let's move away from the east and head to the south.
All right, and now in South Africa, the Witness, just a few stories. We spoke a little bit about this earlier. It says Ramaphosa shakes things up. Mashatile appointed deputy president as the cabinet positions are reshuffled. And of course, you can see pictures of some of those who are out and some of those who, are coming in South Africa. Also, a DSW case involving former eThekwini mayor gets going. We can also find here UK's Boris Johnson touts father as for knighthood. That's on the foreign scene. Top of the screen there, you can see articles, a country fragmenting, and also man released in Richmond family murder case. And finally, Makram appointed SAT20 skipper. That's in sports this morning in South Africa. But of course, the major conversations happening across the political scene in South Africa is the cabinet reshuffle by President Cyril Ramaphosa. And, what comes next? The whole of 2023, South Africans, of course, are anticipating better governance and some of all of that. But moving away from South Africa, let's see what's going on in Nigeria this morning.
All right, here in the west of Africa, this day newspaper has a number of stories. The big one says, INEC's application to court to reconfigure BVAS raising integrity questions. Commission harps on need to reset devices before their deployment for governorship. States Houses of Assembly polls. And that's on page 9. Article leads march for free and fair voting. You can see the photograph there of the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, chairman of the party, Iyocha, and former chairman PDP, Okwesileze Nwodo, protesting the poor conduct of the recent presidential election in Abuja. We also have here PDP, ample evidence shows INEC's deliberate complicity to rig presidential election, and this is according to PDP, of course. They go further to say that the commission deceived Nigerians, knowingly deactivated BVAS. APC dismisses opposition parties' protest. At the top of the paper, we have banks resume issuance of old 500 naira and 1,000 naira notes to customers. At 503 billion naira, CBN records 52.39% repayment under Anchor Borrowers Program, says 119 billion naira not due. So I think the era of the POS operators have come to an end. We hope that they've been able to maximize the season and buy enough lands for their future, because now everybody should be able to access cash. Tanya Cole pledges to create 230,000 jobs in first 100 days in office, and of course this is the gubernatorial candidate for the All Progressives Congress in Rivers State, right? And that's all that we can take this morning on this day newspaper. Let's head over to the final paper for this first hour.
All right. The Nation newspaper still here in Nigeria. It says Naira scarcity lingers despite Supreme Court judgment. They are waiting for the CBN to give a go-ahead.
But this paper reports that this day newspaper that I just took reported that the banks have started giving old 500 and 1,000 naira notes.
Yeah, I think I also heard a little bit about that yesterday, that you can now get some of those that in the bank. But I mean, until it floods the streets, across Nigeria, then we would never.
Which then begs the question: whose word really is one to take?
Yeah.
Is it the word of the Supreme Court, or is it the word of the CBN? Because the Supreme Court then gives an order, and then people are waiting, organizations and institutions are waiting for the central bank to give an order, or to assent to the order of the Supreme Court, waiting for the presidency to speak. Interestingly, someone put out a tweet yesterday saying that Supreme Court gave an order about the Naira note, and Federal High Court still is not collecting the old Naira note. So what are we saying?
That's interesting. That's very interesting. But of course, with regards to the post on the Nation newspaper this morning, I'm not expecting that the Naira would flood the country in
immediately.
Yeah, exactly. 24, 48 hours or 72 hours.
I mean, it's been more than
48 hours.
It was on Saturday.
Actually.
Yeah.
All right, still on the Nation this morning, INEC to reconfigure BVAS for governorship assembly elections. That's on page 8 this morning. Of course, there is some pushback to that because the two opposition parties, of course, have sought the same BVAS machine so that they can assess them and, do their own investigations into what may have happened in the presidential elections. So we're not sure how this would turn out, but would follow. CBN tackles IMF's claim on Anchor Borrowers loans. 98 senators elect, 325 reps elect to get certificate of return today. And it's also something we may want to talk about sometime during the week or maybe next week. The number of women who have been elected in this National Assembly still doesn't look very promising. Not very many of them. The numbers are really, really, saddening. Also this morning, Olani Kpeku and 49 others to defend Tinubu's mandate. APC, PDP clash over presidential poll results. And also Buhari seeks duty-free access for least developed countries. We can also find here why Oyo LP dumped candidate for Makinde, and also Igbo group canvasses support for Sanwo-Olu. On the Punch newspapers this morning, Supreme Court order on old notes, banks in partial compliance, begins skeletal recirculation. A few banks pay old 500 and 1,000 naira on Monday. Others await directives as Emefiele keeps mum. Most ATMs remain dry. Skeptical bank customers. Traders reject old notes from banks. We can also find here Whitney. Chrisland 6 autopsy review. Inquest begins April 4th. And 50 feared killed as suspected headsmen invade Benue communities. We are back to hearing of stories from headsmen and bandits and kidnappers again right after the elections. I'm not sure if they would hold on to the governorship elections are done. So, I don't know how they're going to, play this one out. But 50 feared killed. 200 hoodlums arrested during presidential polls, says the police. And also on Saturday, March 11th, of course, that's a promoted post. Wouldn't take that one. Atiku vows to extend protest, demands result cancellation. Government seeks 327 billion naira donor funding for census. And also, don't time to education like Buhari. ASU tells Tinubu. Interesting. I think these are the stories that we can share here. INEC challenges Atiku and Obi's suit on BVAS. I think everyone needs to understand the fears that the the PDP and the Labour Party have with regards INEC reconfiguring the BVAS machines before the governorship elections. Their fears are that it wipes out the information that it should still have from the presidential elections, which they tend to, intend to use for their court case if they eventually go to court, or when they eventually get to court. Well, those are the stories on the Punch newspapers. Let's go to the Daily Trust newspapers this morning. It says here, queues for cash persist. Customers bribe bank officials. Banks pay old notes in Kano, Abuja, and Ibadan. And also presidential poll, Atiku Tambuwal lead PDP's protest to INEC. Federal government to spend 869 billion naira on 2023 census, says the minister. And also 10 family members returning from wedding die in auto crash. Many killed in Benue farmers' herders clashes. We're back at it once again. IGP put CPs on alert for post-election crisis, and also Dogowa granted 500 million naira bail, barred from Kano governorship poll. Interesting, and of course, people had mentioned yesterday that if he is being charged with culpable homicide, nobody really expected that was immediately or so easily a bailable offense in Nigeria. He's accused of, being responsible for the murder of certain individuals in the build-up to the elections and on election day proper in northern Nigeria. But these are the stories on the Daily Trust newspapers. Let's move away from there and see what's going on in Uganda this morning on the Citizen newspapers. This morning, or the Daily Monitor, I beg your pardon, in Uganda. It says here, government teams stuck in pornography fight. Wow. It says no progress. A cocktail of legal and logistical issues, including the failure to procure a pornography machine, have hamstrung a team of professionals the government tapped a few years ago to fight the vice, and now they do only radio talk shows. I'm not sure what that is about. We can also find on the Daily Monitor this morning how Busoga will benefit from rice irrigation project, and also finance articles here. Public debt crunch bites as government freezes borrowing. That's on page 20. And we also have, of course, some images on your screen. Kwamape North MP shows his spotted skin, which is an infection he claims started when he was in detention for 17 months. That's a really sad story. Well, those are the stories on the Daily Monitor this morning. Now, let's see what's going on in Tanzania this morning on the Citizen newspapers. This morning on the Citizen, it says here, stakeholders welcome education circular, but though its latest circular, the government has banned camps organized by schools to prepare pupils for national exams and also prohibited boarders in nursery and low primary schools. That's on page 2. And also why cash crunch is now a distant memory. That's from the president. Tanzanians, especially those in the lower middle income brackets, can now breathe a sigh of relief that the infamous Vyuma Vimekazi, I beg your pardon, days are behind them. I know I didn't pronounce that right. South Sudan, Uganda, EAC nominees given green light. And finally not finally, firms sign 1 billion shillings pact for checks on gas pipeline. And right as to the story on education circular, it says boarders should be allowed from standard 5 and above. It is prohibited to accept boarders in nursery school and from standard 1 to standard 4. These are the big stories that we can find on the Citizen newspapers this morning.